Hey everybody, my name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. This is going to be another recording of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today, our team is going to be Rob Morse of the Slowfax blog and Self-Defense Gun Stories, Charlie Cook of Riding Shotgun with Charlie, Charlie's Gungrams, Writing Shotgun with Charlie, and about a million other things he does. So, none of the rest of the team could make it tonight, but we'll soldier on and get through it. Joining us for the interview segment here in just a little bit is going to be Rebecca Schmoe of 1 Million Moms Against Gun Control, and she's also running for a seat in the Kansas legislature, so we'll be getting to that here in just a minute. I got to make sure that the social media is all hooked up. Looks like YouTube is all hooked up and ready to go. And Facebook is in the process. There we go. Want to remind everybody, if you want to get a comment in while we're live and on the air, comment either on the Facebook or YouTube videos, or if you are watching on OpsLens or any other form of consuming our media, just tweet with the hashtag PSPodcast. That actually gets to be the fastest. We'll get your comment on the air and we'll discuss it live. Alrighty, I need to silence my phone so that it doesn't bother us all evening long like it's been going off all day. So I think, guys, on my end, we're ready to fly. Are you two ready to go?
Let's launch.
Okay. All right, in that case, we're going to go in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Masad Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, July the 11th, 2022. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morse. And on tonight's show, we'll talk with Rebecca Schmoe about 1 Million Moms Against Gun Control, and also about her candidacy for the Kansas House. Wow.
I'm Charlie Cook, and we'll talk about what is truly a ghost gun and truly an illegal gun in a gun-controlled country. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on. Episode 626 of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast starts right now. All right, it's Monday night. It's 6 p.m. in the Central Time Zone, the only time zone that matters. That means it's time for another episode of the Polite Society podcast. And as I usually do, I'm going to go to Rob first and say, Rob, what's been going on since the last time you were on the air with me, man?
My wife smuggled me out of the country and then got me back inside. I had a great vacation. And I came back, got right to work. I was on Bill Frady's Lock and Load radio show this afternoon. On Sunday afternoon, I was a guest on Tom Gresham's Gun Talk Radio. Charlie, what you been up to?
I had a Utah class this past weekend, but it was not in Salt Lake City. And it's interesting. I've as gun folks, we're into this, and we try to keep up to date on what's going on. But as people that are newish gun owners and not as experienced as we are, they had a lot of questions about how Bruin was going to affect things. So, Paul and Susan, what have you guys been up to?
Well, on my part, we did not have a show on Monday of last week because Monday was the 4th. And it would have been me giving a 90-minute monologue, and nobody wants a 90-minute monologue from me.
No, nobody wants that.
So Susan doesn't even want that, and she's married to me. So
she doesn't want anymore.
So anyway, since the last time I've been on the air on Polite Society, last week I went and I took the South Dakota Enhanced Permit class. Susan's already got hers, but I am what is known as a cheapskate. South Dakota passed a law this year that all fees for permits, including background check fees, including fingerprinting fees, all that is now covered by the state. You still have to pay to take your class, but so whoever you take your class from still charges you. But from the state, it is absolutely positively free to get your enhanced or any permit from the state. So I waited till after July 1st when the law took effect. I went and I took my South Dakota Enhanced Permit class. I did that late last week and absolutely had a ball doing it. It was a one-on-one class. There was nobody in the class but me and the instructor.
That's when we know the right people.
Yeah, there you go. And I tell you what, even with all, I am absolutely pro-training. You folks know this, and I've been to a bunch of training classes. I've hosted a bunch of training classes. I'm going again to be going to some training classes. But even in this South Dakota Enhanced class, I learned some things. So expect in the near future for me to continue pushing that you need to go through training and to continue to say training should never be mandated because you should want to go get this information. So
just for the record, Tony Simon does not say that you're cheap. He says that you're tactically frugal.
Yes.
So that is the term. That is the term that I use on a regular basis. I'm tactically frugal.
I like that. I think I'll steal that from the both of yous. But anyway, the both of yous. Anyway.
Well, he is from Jersey.
All right.
Thank you.
Anything else? I think.
Off the tracks
Yeah.
already.
Doesn't take much these days, does it? Before we head off to break, I do want to talk briefly about the Self-Defense Radio Network. Charlie's Riding Shotgun with Charlie is there. Rob's Self-Defense Gun Stories is there. Altogether, we have 14 shows up on the network. And you can listen right from the webpage at sdrn.us or subscribe. The subscription information is right there. Whatever your preference is, just please visit us and take a look at what we have. All your favorite pro-freedom podcasts in one place, sdrn.us. Right now, we're going to step aside to break. When we come back, waiting patiently for us to get to break so we can get to her interview segment is Rebecca Schmoe. We'll be talking with her right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tueller, and led by network president Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
Hey, and welcome back. This is the interview segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining us in the interview segment today is Rebecca Schmoe. Rebecca, I know you. I was introduced to you as the person behind 1 Million Moms Against Gun Control, and I've known you for quite a while now. I want to start off with 1 Million Moms Against Gun Control, if we could. How did your involvement there start out?
Okay, so when Sandy Hook, when that absolute tragedy happened, I was just like everybody else. I was sitting at home watching TV and just horrified and hugging my kids. I have 3 boys of my own, and they were all very young, right around the same age as the kids that had been attacked. And so I was watching along with everybody else when Mike Bloomberg started paying moms to go on TV and say that moms wanted to get rid of guns, that we were all against guns and that they were dangerous. And I was sitting in my living room with my children, understanding that my husband at the time worked nights, and I was at home with these defenseless kids, and my best form of defense was going to be able to meet force with force. And the idea that there were moms saying that all moms wanted control of guns really didn't sit well with me. So I started looking around on the internet for like-minded women. And I happened upon a Facebook page that was called 1 Million Moms Against Gun Control. And it was called that because at the time, when they had first come out, they were actually 1 million moms for gun control. So we were the first answer to their claim that moms wanted regulations. And so basically I hooked up with this group and I stayed. And I continued the fight, and I have taken it to the state level. I have taken it to the federal level, and it's important to me for other moms to know that we do have a voice, for other parents to understand that we are not alone. We want the same thing that everybody wants. We want our kids to be safe. We just happen to understand that they are the safest when they are protected adequately.
Very cool. So let me start then by I haven't looked at 1 million moms against gun control recently, and I should have. So I'm falling down on the job myself, but I think your reach is far beyond 1 million moms, isn't it?
It is. From when people go to the Facebook page, what they see is, several thousand people, but we all know how the censorship has gone over the last several years as far as social media goes. The thing about 1 Million Moms Against Gun Control is that our mission, it kind of evolved over the years while we found our place, but our mission is to affiliate with organizations and instructors across the country. And so Mary Callison, who is my counterpart in Illinois, she and I have put in a decade of getting to know firearms instructors and legislators all over the country so that someone can get a hold of 1 Million Moms Against Gun Control. And even if they don't like the page and follow the page, they can get a hold of us, and we are able to hook them up usually within about 50 miles. Now you get to places like Montana and it's probably going to be a little further than 50 miles just because of the way that it's set up. But we can hook them up with instructors that we know personally. We can hook them up with legislators who are active in trying to protect rights. We can hook them up with whatever their local organizations are that are actively in the fight to protect rights. And so we kind of became the middleman, and we just facilitate all of these introductions, and it's been fantastic, and we have gotten to know so many amazing people over the years. We talk about the gun community all the time, and when it's done right, it really is a community. We are neighbors, and we are all just out there trying to help each other, and it makes the nation very small. And so it's just a fantastic thing to get to be a part of. And I'm very thankful that 10 years ago I happened upon the group.
Very, very cool. I'm going to open it. Rob, Charlie, anything you want to ask right off the bat?
What would you say? Okay, there's the new gun owner. Hi, I'm not sure if I need arm protection. Tell me about it. How do I go about it? How do I learn about it? And then there's someone who says, okay, I'm I'm pretty sure I need to be armed. What are the political aspects of defending that right? If you had to weigh those two missions, because you're involved in both, how much of your time gets dedicated to each, do you think?
Generally speaking, when we very first started out, there were women that were gun owners and there were women who were involved in the industry, but it is nothing like it is today. So when we very first started out 10 years ago, we had a whole lot more of the I'm a new gun owner, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with guns conversation. Now we have really had this dynamic shift in the Second Amendment community. And so now it is much more focused on, what are the laws in my area? And if I don't like the laws, who can I talk to try to change the laws? What are the laws in other areas? Because I want to take a vacation with my kids. And so it really has evolved. But over the last couple of years, we have seen a huge boom in brand new gun ownership. So it kind of came back full circle over the last couple of years. And we are talking to a lot of people who are brand new gun owners who just want to know, how do I carry? Should I carry with something in the chamber? Because that's scary for a lot of people. Should I take this course or that course? And how do I know if something's reputable? And so it's been a really interesting arc. And so now I'm really excited to go back into the momentum of what are the laws and how can I change the ones I don't like.
Full circle. Amazing.
All right. Well, let me dovetail off that then, because you are doing the epitome of that, and that is that in Kansas you are running for the Kansas State House, and you found some things you don't like. You do want to change them. How did that? Something, by the way, that I've advocated for a very long time. What was that decision process like for you? What made you decide that, look, this is something I really have to do, because it's not easy?
No, it's not easy. And I'm coming to learn a lot about the process. So my personal rep in my district has not always been what we in the community term as friendly. Now, he has never been anti. And it was never like a push that I was trying to prove to him that people should be able to exercise their rights. It was just that he would sit on bills and he wouldn't communicate and he wouldn't carry gun bills for me. I could contact legislators all over the state who were on board, and I could get them moving in the direction that I needed them to move in. They would send me things to review. I would send them things to review. I would be able to ask them questions, but I couldn't always get my rep in my district on the phone. And one of my big things I talk about a lot is that our representatives are our employees. They answer to us. We, the people, are the ones that are in charge, and they are a public servant providing a public service. And so when my own rep was having a hard time communicating with me, as active as I am, I understood that he was probably not communicating well with the people who were not hounding him every week trying to get some So he, at the end of this last session, unbeknownst to anybody, and really surprisingly, he announced from the well that he was going to retire. And so he didn't let anybody in the district know. His colleagues didn't really know in the House. And so it was the last day of session, and because I do what I do, I was paying attention. And that was the time that I started calling around saying, okay, for my county Republican Party, who's the guy? Who are we supporting? And they were like, do you know somebody? And at that time, I was like, well, I know somebody. I am somebody. if you support me, I'm ready. Let's do this. I know what the job entails. I've been working with bills for the last 10 years. I've built all of these relationships with other legislators. Let's go. Like, let's go make a difference. Let's go protect people's rights. And so I've had amazing support, but I do have a primary opponent. So it's been a very interesting learning curve on how to handle an opponent from your own side, because we're all very used to handling opponents from, enemy camp, but when they're on your own side, it's a lot more of a treacherous landmine situation. So it's been very interesting.
I can imagine. I had a friend a couple years ago that ran for office, and living in a small blue state, there was no competition. So when I talk to people and I hear stories of people that are like, "Oh, we had a primary and we had 7 people that were running as Republicans," I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know I don't know what that's like. Like, we get a choice if we want to be a Republican."
Yeah, it's when so timeline. My rep decided to step down, and there was about 15 days, but before you could no longer put your name in. And so right about 10 days out, I went, all right, I'm just going to do it. And so I went up to Topeka and signed on the line and went to work, because I work a full-time job. And then the day of the deadline, my opponent went up 2 hours before the cutoff and threw his name in the ring, and he had media coverage when he went up there to do that. So it was one of those situations that we're pretty sure that it was kind of set up to begin with. And so it's been an interesting dynamic of really reaching out to people who are very used to the incumbent, and whoever the incumbent is kind of going to back. And they're, upon meeting me, the ones that haven't met me yet, they start realizing what I've been doing for the last 10 years, and they start realizing that, oh, well, I mean, she's got some chops. I mean, she kind of is who she says she is. And then I invite them to go back through the 10 years of all the things I've published and all of the posts that I've made, and I say, these aren't campaign promises. This is who I am. And I'm going to do these things with or without that seat. So for me, it is more, I desperately want my district to be represented. I want a representative who will communicate. And that's what's really driving me. It's not so much that all of a sudden I wanted to be in politics. I've already done that for 10 years in the advocacy side. And so it's interesting when people who have only heard about you through your run start to find out who you've always been. So it's been a lot of fun meeting people.
We're getting close to break, but I want to get a couple comments in here. Over on the YouTube side, Spartan6 says, if you're not pro-gun, then you're anti-gun if you're a government official in today's world. Would you agree with that, Rebecca?
Honestly, at this point in history, if you are not saying out loud, if you are not beating the drum loudly for individual liberty and your rights and freedom, then you are anti-Constitution. And if you're anti-Constitution, then you are, just with the second being in there, then you are anti some people having a gun. Because anti-gun does not adequately describe what we're seeing. They don't mind the gun. They just don't want some people to have them. And so it really is. It's not so much
some people being anybody other than themselves, or the people that are hired to protect themselves.
Exactly.
Yes.
I've got some questions when we come back.
yeah, let's go ahead and do this break quickly, and then we'll have one more segment with Rebecca right after this.
New Jersey is a civil rights wasteland where an unconstitutional law known as justifiable need keeps ordinary citizens from exercising their right to bear arms. New Jersey spits in the eye of freedom, ignores the Bill of Rights and the Heller decision. New Jersey politics are an anti-civil rights bulldozer and a spreading cancer. The Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners, a tax-exempt nonprofit, has a goal to defeat justifiable need, reverse course on all anti-freedom laws, and render aid to other jurisdictions by filing Supreme Court-bound litigation. CNJFO is a beacon of freedom behind the Iron Curtain in New Jersey. Join CNJFO's strong, enthusiastic patriots. Support the Coalition of New Jersey Firearms Owners today. Protect all our rights and return freedom to the Garden State. To donate or learn more, go to cnjfo.com.
All right, welcome back. This is our second interview with Rebecca Schmoe. This is the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Rebecca, I'm one more thing I'm wondering really quick is, for me, I have toyed from time to time with running for elected office, specifically in the House in South Dakota. I haven't, and it's too late now. I'm not going to do it this year, possibly in 2 years. But the one law in South Dakota that just toasts my cookies is, if you're a concealed carry permit holder, you have to know the financials of the place you're going to. You have to know if they make 50% of their sales in alcohol, because that's what determines whether you can legally go there or not. And if I were to call X restaurant that happens to serve beer and ask, do you make 50% of your revenue through alcohol? They're going to tell me to go pound sand. It's none of my business, so I have no way to know whether it's legal to carry there or not. Was there one specific law that helped edge you towards running in Kansas? I know Kansas is constitutional carry.
Really, it wasn't gun laws that helped me move towards this path. It was more so all of the mandates that happened here a few years ago. Our legislature at the time handed over emergency powers to our governor. And our governor is not freedom friendly. And so Laura Kelly really came down and started making all of these excessive mandates. And so many people were miseducated about what a mandate actually is. They thought that when she mandated something, then it became law, and it's more of a strong suggestion. Thankfully, in the district that I live in my county, my sheriff stood up at the local county meeting and then also at my city meeting and said, yeah, we're not going to enforce these because there is no backing to enforce it, and I will not arrest my neighbors for living. So it was more so the infringement on freedom itself and our liberty, less about the guns, because Kansas is pretty gun friendly. There are a few little things that we need to clean up, and we really need to get the standardization of firearm safety in schools passed. I went up this last session and testified on a bill for that with Representative Patrick Penn, and it's really asinine that this thing doesn't exist. We have standards of education across the board in every other part of our public school system. And you can teach gun safety in Kansas, and you don't have to use any kind of mandate, or not mandated, but any kind of standardized curriculum. And so you've got some schools that are teaching the hunter safety version. You've got some schools teaching Eddie Eagle, and you've got some schools that a teacher can stand up and make up whatever they want. And so we really need to get this education piece, and it's not requiring schools to teach it. And a lot of places were trying to say that we were requiring it when all we were trying to do was set the bar. This is the bar, and if you're going to teach it, everybody's going to teach it the same. And so the idea that that's not happening already really sticks in my craw. And the idea that people were against teaching gun safety when they're teaching driver's ed and they're teaching sex ed and they're teaching all kinds of things that would be considered hot topics or dangerous. And yet all of a sudden you throw in the word gun, even when it's followed with safety, and people lose their minds. So we need the standardization, and I am all set and ready to get that bill back through, because it passed halfway through and then fell short because it was never called in the Senate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, now, as I understand, again, you're not mandating that a school teach the class. You're saying if they do, that it have minimum standards, so that it's not just, here's something I saw in the newspaper from Michael Bloomberg, okay, we've had firearm safety covered, check the box.
Yes. And that's really all it was. One of the big pushbacks on it was that for young children, they wanted to use the Eddie Eagle NRA standard because it's free. And so it wasn't going to cost taxpayers any extra money. The schools weren't going to have to fund it. And so they were going to take the already built, already structured program and put that in elementary schools. But because it has the 4-letter word that's only 3 actual letters of NRA, then people were suddenly just, it was like a car wreck on the side of the road. Everybody was gasping and shocked and just horrified that that was going to be in a school. And they did not understand that it was not about training kids to be a part of the NRA. It was about stop, don't touch, run away, tell a grown-up. And the NRA's messaging for that was just the easiest, most memorable that we've got out there right now. And then for the older kids, we were going to use the Kansas Department of Wildlife Hunter Safety. And so that's already available, and it was also going to be free. And so we were just trying to save taxpayers money and save the school districts money that they could be spending on the kid in the chair in the classroom, because we know that never seems to get to them. We allocate all this money, but it never seems to reach where we're trying to send it. So it's just things like that, the miscommunications and the miseducation that's happening just for everyday people. Whenever I was part of the Kansas State Rifle Association, part of my responsibility with them was I would take a bill and then I would break it down to where you took out all the legalese and you made it easily consumable for everyday people, whether they're the people that don't understand the legalese or whether they're the people who just don't want to read it. And so it was part of my job to break it down into digestible increments. And so I've already got that background, and I just want to use it to help people understand what the bills are. And if that means I'm helping some of my legislator cohorts understand what the bills say before they start, voting on them, then all the better. So that was
so there will be no more. We have to pass it to see what's in it, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I was at a meeting a few days ago, and I made the comment that Pelosi had it wrong. You don't pass it to see what's in it. You actually do have to read it. So it got a nice round of applause.
Nice.
I want to make. Oh, go ahead.
I want to get this real quick. I want to get this one in from Dana. He said the Bloombergs have corrupted the term safety, gun safety. We need to take it back. Dana, bud, I'm right there with you on that one. We need to not only take back the term gun safety, we need to pin them with gun grabbers. They're trying to take gun safety. We need to make sure they stay as gun grabbers.
Yep.
Charlie, you want to say something?
Yeah, so you were talking about a lot of the new gun owners that you have out there. Is there any pushback from some of the people that have been in the gun community before? I know that FUDs have bad reputations, and it seems to me like there's the people that want to carry don't want to hunt, and the people that want to hunt don't want to carry. And my third line to it is nobody knows what's going on with the shotgunners. So, are there people that have been in the firearm community in Kansas that maybe don't want to go along with some of this?
There are always people who think that whatever their pet project is the only thing that matters. You're always going to find those people. Early on, while I started with 1 Million Moms Against Gun Control, I had some pushback because, I'm a girl. And so there were a lot of men that didn't want me to talk about carrying a gun or using a gun for my own safety. I would go to gun shops and I would have them literally pointing out the pink pistol and, oh, honey, you need this. Or I had one guy actually tell me that I needed to come back with my dad or my husband because I didn't know what I was doing. And so there are always people that are going to be that. As far as the hunters and the carriers and the shotgunners, I am all of those. So I happen to ascribe to basically, I think Amanda Suffolcool talks about it a lot, how picking out a gun and figuring out how you're going to carry it and what you're going to do and where you're going to carry it and when, that's very similar to a woman picking out a bra. And you can't have somebody else do that for you. That's something that you do for you. And being as though I'm very liberty-minded, I don't want the responsibility of picking out your bra. Go do it yourself.
I'll second that, by the way.
Right. I want to say that I'm very pro-bra.
I want to make Charlie jealous here, Rebecca. Kansas has had constitutional carry for the last 7 years. Not the Commonwealth, is it, Charlie? But there are still some issues, and I think this is right in the heart of what you were talking about, Rebecca. We've seen policemen stand outside when our schools were attacked, and we've seen them ignore people who clearly have mental health problems. They threaten others, and they're still able to get a gun. I don't think that we're ever going to be safe if our families' lives depend on a government bureaucrat to keep us safe. Would you comment on that?
Absolutely. Okay, so here recently in the news, everybody watched in horror again. Just like we did 10 years ago, everybody sat at home and watched this horrific event unfold in Uvalde. And the more we are finding out about what happened there and the lack of engagement from law enforcement, I can't imagine being a parent or being anyone and thinking that the things that we just witnessed happen when someone was attacking children. How do you equate in your mind that they're going to protect you? For one, I know a ton of amazing police officers, amazing sheriff's officers. I know a lot of people who do a lot of good, and they wish that they could be on scene every single time something bad was getting ready to happen so they could stop it. But the fact is that they're not. And so they want us to be able to defend ourselves as much as we want to be able to defend ourselves. They would much rather have an armed public who can take care of their own defense so that they can come along later and find out what happened and hold people accountable that need to be held accountable. That's their job. The Supreme Court has said that that's their job. They're there to clean up the mess after the fact. If they happen to be present and able to engage at the time, and then they choose to engage at the time, that's fantastic. but even the Supreme Court said that we cannot rely on that. And so I would encourage everyone to understand that you are your own first responder. It is your responsibility to protect yourself and your kids. And part of protecting your kids is teaching them in adequate steps in appropriate times to also defend themselves.
We are coming up again on the time we have, and this time just flies by. I wish we had more, but I told you I'd only keep you for a half an hour. Rebecca, we had a personal phone call. I know even primaries are incredibly expensive. If somebody wants to support you, how do they do that?
Okay, the easiest way is to find me on social media on Instagram or on Facebook, and it's super easy. It's Rebecca Schmoe for Kansas, and then there's a link on those pages that you can click and donate. Aside from that, if you find those pages and you send me a direct message on those, then I can send you the address to the bank that houses my my campaign funds. And so it is incredibly expensive. I had no idea coming into this how much money there was exchanged during election time. And I tell you what, recession or not or whatever, there is big money moving in an election. And so it really is a learning curve that I am thoroughly enjoying. So
except when it's time to write the check, I'm sure.
Yeah. I have to remind myself all the time, I am incredibly frugal. We'll say frugal. Tony Simon, thank you. And every time I have to write a check, I have to remember, first of all, to make sure that I am doing right by those who have donated. It is my most important goal to be a good steward of the money that's been given to the campaign. And then I have to make sure that I remind myself that I am not spending this money on me. I'm spending it to give my district a voice. And so asking for money is one of the hardest things in all of this for me. I hate it because it's not how I was raised. It's not who I am. And so I have to remind myself, when people want to donate, they're not donating to Rebecca. They're donating to the 59th district because they want us to have a voice.
And last question on our way out, because and I'm sure this will surprise a lot of people. 59th district in Kansas. We're not talking Kansas City. We're not talking a huge metropolitan area here. If top of your head, and you can tell me to go pound sand if you'd like, how much is your printing bill for those yard signs?
The yard signs were $1,800.
Yeah, so
and that's just 500, and that's just this size.
Yeah. So
it was almost 2,000 for 500 of those.
Yeah, so again, these campaigns they're not free.
And then you have to buy the little push cards, the little palm cards that you give out to everybody. So you've got to buy those too. And if anybody knows anything about printing, having full color and glossy on one side, man, that stuff adds up. And those are just the basic things that you start with. And then you start adding in stuff like t-shirts or the great big signs and different meet and greet events and things like that you're paying for. And it gets crazy. I had no idea how much money was in an election.
When is your primary?
Primary is, early voting. I hate early voting. Early voting starts on July 18th, and then you can vote up to the day before the primary, and the primary is on August 2nd. And then tomorrow is the last day that you can register to vote in the state of Kansas, that you will be able to vote in the primary. So they have one more day if they aren't already registered, or if you have any questions about whether or not you're registered where you live right now, then you have to sort that out by tomorrow, or else you can't vote in the primary.
Tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah. It's moving along. This is really, I mean, between this and having kids and working a full-time job, man, my summer is flying.
Well, and I'm sorry, but I do have one more question.
Yeah.
In South Dakota, they don't pay a lot for legislators. I'm imagining Kansas. You're going to be, if you make it through the primary, are the representative for your party in the election, and you win the election, you're not getting millions of dollars a year for that seat.
Oh,
you're
no.
getting a few thousand, and they expect you to be there for a couple, 3 months, right?
Okay, so in the state of Kansas, to give you a comparison, I worked the election at the polls last year for the whole day, right? For the 12 hours or whatever. And I made like $122 working the polls. And it was like glorified jury duty. Kansas legislators get paid $88 a day while in session. So if you're not in session, you're not getting paid. If you are in session, then you're making $88 a day. So it doesn't even pay as well as working at the polls.
Yeah. It doesn't even pay as well as working an 8-hour shift flipping burgers.
No, right. And in fact, my employer, I work at a bank, and my employer has been amazing. And so not only has he allowed me to pursue this, but he is prepared for when I win and when I get sent to Topeka, he's going to make sure that my shifts are all covered as manager of as babysitter of the bank. So he will make sure that all of that's covered so that I can go represent us well in Topeka. So it's been amazing.
Very cool.
I thought you were going to say at $88 a day, he's going to give you extra shifts.
Not at a bank. We've got banker's hours.
All right, well, that is the time we have. We've actually gone a little bit over time, but Rebecca, thank you for taking your time to talk to us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I love seeing you guys. You guys are some of my favorites.
All right, folks, we are going to step aside to break. When we come back, we're going to get to the news. We'll get to that right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off.
Hey, and welcome back. This is the news segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. To get started here, Susan, are you up on microphone?
No, I am not.
Okay. When you are, will you let me know?
Okay. I'm here.
All right. Let's go ahead and start off. I think Japan leads our news today.
That is correct, sir. Japan has had some of the strictest gun laws since World War II, when they were forced to disarm completely by the Allied powers. On Thursday, former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was assassinated when he was shot twice from behind by a 41-year-old suspect with what appeared to be a homemade handgun. Officials also found explosives at the shooter's home during a search. It just goes to show, gun control is fruitless. The law-abiding will obey your authoritarian rules, but the criminals will always find a way to arm themselves.
This firearm looks like it came right out of Home Depot.
Yeah, it does.
Wood, duct tape, a couple pieces of pipe, shotgun shells. I think it was electronically actuated, meaning you closed a battery, generated some heat, things go boom.
Touch some wires together, yeah, something like that. It did not appear as though it. This certainly wasn't a Smith and Wesson. It wasn't a Glock. It wasn't a Sig. I mean, it was obviously very homemade, although effective.
Let's face it, it wasn't even a P80.
Hey, don't make fun of Charles. Don't make fun of Tony Simon and his High Point. It's not fair. Don't do that.
This is true. This is true. My one of my ongoing things. So we talk about taking the language back. One of my things is to not call ghosts ghost guns. One of the things that sets the hair up on my back is when somebody talks about an illegal gun. And to me, and I have to use funny voices when I say that, they'll say, well, they had an illegal gun. And I'm always like, no. It wasn't an illegal gun. It was a gun illegal that they had, or a gun illegally that they had. And, this is, well, these criminals have these illegal guns. No, the guns the criminals had are made by Smith and made by Glock and made by Sig. To me, this truly was an illegal gun. This guy fashioned all, pipes and tubes and wires and wood and duct tape or electrical tape to make some sort of a gun, to make completely a homemade firearm.
Yep.
And that's one of my beefs with it,
Gotcha.
My look, the average person, and this person obviously has some technical knowledge. Were I to try and fashion something, I am fairly certain, having shot, in my lifetime, I'm sure approaching 100,000 rounds. But if I were to try to fashion something myself, totally, completely homemade in this style, I'm pretty sure I would blow it. I would blow myself up doing it.
Right. It's the whole, you don't buy fireworks from the guy that's missing a couple of fingers. This is, you could hurt yourself if you don't know what you're doing.
Yes.
But I do like the point that you said, this is a gun. The illegal action was taken by the individual. The gun didn't do something illegal.
Yes.
Good point.
Right. And the gun did what it's supposed to do.
And how are they going to get more gun restrictions in Japan now? Because they obviously need more gun control laws, right?
Well, I think the point being is anyone shocked that criminals broke the law? Okay, if you flunk that test, see me later. I've got a guy in a nice white coat, and you and he need to talk. We won't speak loud, small words. We'll get it through.
It's ridiculous. I mean, but this is where the anti-gun folks want us to go to, and we can see even in Japan, that a country where you can't have any firearms, people still make firearms and still commit crimes and still assassinate their political leaders.
Yeah, unfortunately, it happens. I'm not going to say I'm an expert on Japan. I am not. I'm wondering if the former prime minister had a security detail around him. Like our presidents here, they have a lifetime of Secret Service around them.
Right.
I don't know if Japan has something similar or not. I'm guessing they will now, but if not, they probably should. What's the popular quote? You can't stop the signal, Kenneth. You're never going to totally stop evil. It's going to happen.
Well, therefore, we want to design systems that will tolerate an evil person and succeed anyway, right? If you can take down a government or a politician with one person with ill intent, I'm sorry, we need to change some things because there will be that person.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's going to be one person that look. Today, Biden had
having a plan that depends on the world being filled with angels isn't a plan.
You're right. Today, Biden had a press conference at the White House, and the whole thing was, that we signed this bill a week ago. It's a great start. Here's what we want to do next, and we all knew that was coming. It's a great start. But in the middle of this press conference, I have two things about this press conference. And Susan, I'm sorry I'm rambling on, but the press conference was scheduled. I hit YouTube at the beginning of the press conference. At the time it was supposed to start. Actually, I was 3 minutes late. They started streaming 3 minutes before I got there. 17 minutes after I got there, they went live. That's a fail. That's an absolute fail. If you're going to schedule something, you need to have people that can keep a schedule. Second thing, what I want to point out is there was, in this hand-picked group of gun grabbers, there was a guy that got up and was berating the president that he just wasn't doing enough. And this was not planned, and Biden looked like he was going to go totally off script, and he did go off script a little bit, but I was seriously thinking, is there going to be a problem? Where is the Secret Service? Because they were not immediately around him when this whole thing started. This guy had unfortunately lost a child to violence, and had been previously had scaled the fence at the White House, yet somehow he got into this press conference. Doesn't say a whole lot for security at the Oval Office there.
No.
Don't they do background checks on the people that are coming to press conferences?
One would think they should.
Right? Yeah, you're just talking about it took time for the president's people to react. Remember when George Bush had a shoe thrown at him and he
yes
twice?
That guy had some good reaction time too, man.
Yeah, absolutely. If somebody could, not that I would encourage someone to throw a shoe at Biden, but there's no way he would. There's no way he would duck. Absolutely not.
No. And no, I'm not going to encourage that either. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say keep your shoes on. And if you're in a position where you can, certainly use your voice, but only use your voice.
Of course. We don't want to encourage shoe violence.
Right. We're going to get shoe restrictions, common sense shoe control. Susan, let's talk about our next story. This is what, Virginia?
It is. A tipster whom officials are calling a hero may have prevented a mass shooting at a July 4th event in Richmond, Virginia. The caller told police about overhearing plans for a mass shooting at a holiday celebration at the city's Dogwood Dell Amphitheater. The tip led to the arrests of two men police said were found with assault rifles, a handgun, and 223 rounds of ammunition, law enforcement officials said on Wednesday. One phone call saved numerous lives on the 4th of July, Police Chief Gerald M. Smith said at a news conference.
I wonder if that was a gun-free zone.
Not only that, I'm wondering how much of a plan they're really, because I'll be very honest with you. If they were to raid my house right now, what they are calling assault rifles in my house. Check. Handgun? A handgun? Yeah, check. 223 rounds of ammunition per handgun? Check. And yeah, they absolutely are. I have to wonder if this isn't maybe a kind of a red flag law type thing where somebody said, look, Joe is a nutcase and we're just going to get Joe's guns because we don't like Joe very much.
Right.
I don't know. I think this is a tough one. I mean, if they had plans and expressed that they wanted to go shoot at someplace, then I think it's good that somebody saw something and said something.
Yes.
But I guess to me that would be the difference between a red flag and seeing something and saying something, because they heard somebody say they were going to do this, but if they just called them and said, hey, listen, you know what, they're playing Led Zeppelin and we don't like 70s metal,
they're Satanists. Yes.
Right, exactly. So then they're going to call on them. Then that would certainly be a different thing for me, but this is good. Somebody was able to potentially save some lives with a phone call, which is good. But this is not something we're going to hear about in the media for weeks until the next one happens.
And I got to say, until Susan started reading this, because I've been so busy with the Bullet and trying to keep things organized there. Dana does our news here. I hadn't heard of this until Susan started reading it. I do my primary searches for the Bullet on gun rights, and so this never crossed my radar. But
right.
I want to kind of agree with Charlie, and Susan and I have watched some television recently. We're hooked on cooking shows. When I have time to watch television, we like watching cooking shows together. One of the commercials that comes on quite frequently is for Sandy Hook Promise. And while I do not like what they're doing legislatively with their commercial, what they're doing is basically, if you is saying, we need to stop bullying in schools, something I totally agree with. It's kind of a human condition, but we need to stop it as much as we can. They're saying, while we're worried about the next school shooting, a kid is planning it. And they're saying, basically, if you run across information like this, do something with that information. And they're not, in this commercial, they're not pushing gun grabs. They're not pushing taking any rights away in this commercial. And I was very surprised by that.
I'm a big fan of the Gun for Hire podcast, which is hosted by Anthony Colantro at the Gun for Hire range in New Jersey. I know we all know Anthony. He had an episode.
By the way, Anthony, get well soon, man. I seen he was in for a knee replacement or something like that.
Ooh. Oh yes, yeah. He's getting a new knee. He did a show a long time ago. Like I've been listening to a show for 10 years at least, and he did a show where he talked about what someone goes through when they plan a mass shooting, and it must have been after Sandy Hook that he did this. It was really interesting because the murderer goes through fantasizing about it. They go through planning it. They go through planning how they're going to execute it, and they think about all this stuff ahead of time. And every time we hear things, whether it's these guys in Virginia or the guy in Japan, they have stuff at home. They've been planning for this. They've been, I hate to say stockpiling ammunition, but they've been buying ammunition, they've been buying guns, they've been buying the tools that they need to go out and commit this crime. And I wish I remembered what episode it was, but it really is something that I think people should listen to. And after the shooting a couple months ago, after one of the mass shootings, I forget which one it was, I went back and was able to dig it up and listen to it. And they talk about all the stuff people go through when they plan one of these. It's not like they plan it spontaneously. They take the time and prepare for everything.
Big John 410 on the YouTube side said they looked like drug dealers, rival gang maybe. You know, that's certainly always a possibility. And then going back to the president's press conference, Facebook is finally getting the comments come through to my software. For a good 20 minutes into the show, they weren't sending my comments to my broadcast software. So, but John says, Manuel Oliver, whose son Joaquin, 17, was killed in the Parkland mass shooting, interrupted the event to demand Biden do more. Thankfully, John, and unfortunately for Manuel Oliver, it's really not up to the president. It's got to start with the House and the Senate. And we're going to have a new Senate and hopefully a new House come January of next year. And they've all got to be aware of that. We need to make them aware of that over the next several months.
All right, so this guy was able to get into the White House press briefing, whatever. What's the word I'm looking for? Press conference. He was able to make it this far. What are the odds that he was a plant by someone like Bloomberg or someone that's got some money that said, hey, let this guy in. Here's a little extra money. Let this guy in. He's going to go in, cause a scene, and stir it up a little bit.
You know, it would be good money spent by Bloomberg because it certainly got my attention, and when we're spreading it to a lot of people. So,
right.
I don't know
ROI.
how. Yeah, exactly. I don't know how. I don't know how much the legacy media is going to pick up on it, but
right.
Want to get to a few older comments in here from Spartan 6, and he's talking about the Japan. Japan disarmed. Someone forgot to tell the Yakuza.
Right.
Or when I was a younger man and I weren't there when I was watching, whenever there were movies, bad B-grade movies, but in the movies, weren't they called triads?
Yeah, the triads.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Again, I'm not a Japanese expert, period. All right, Susan, and by the way, Susan's doing double duty. Not only is she reading the news, she also, when the dogs, you all heard the dog bark. When the dogs did, she jumped up and let the dogs out so they would quiet down. Where are we going next, Susan?
We are going to Illinois. When you talk about states with strict gun control laws, Illinois would be one of the top states. Yet they allowed a 22-year-old mentally ill man to purchase a rifle and handguns despite all the warning signs. Warnings unheeded. In 2019, Highland Park police were contacted a week after the boy attempted suicide. The report was delayed, so when they eventually went to the residence, spoke with him and his parents, they found the matter was being handled by mental health professionals. Later in 2019, they were again back at the residence, and this time seized over a dozen knives, a dagger, and a sword. Illinois State Police were notified and told about his threat to, quote, kill everyone, end quote. Yet he was able to purchase 5 firearms: Highland Park, Uvalde, Buffalo, Parkland, Boulder, Brooklyn Subway, and on and on and on, were all known by the FBI or local law enforcement. And so many times they had reported mental health issues which should have thrown up flags and been entered into NICS, but someone dropped the ball. And hey, let's ban guns.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Susan.
Charlie and I just a couple hours ago did a bullet a show, and I first of all, I got to apologize to Charlie. I was getting kind of wrapped up in reading. We opened the show by me reading all the places in New York where the new law says you cannot carry. It was 7.5 minutes, and I was really focused over on this screen where the list of all the things were, and I wasn't looking back over here so I could see what was going on on the air. And so the whole 7.5 minutes that the list was going on, this is what everybody on the bullet seen. And so, yeah.
You know why that happened?
Because I wasn't paying attention to what I should have been?
Because subconsciously you all know we prefer looking at Charlie over you.
Well, there is that.
Mercy. At one point,
well, he does have a big following in Utah.
This is true.
He does. He also has the most recognized.
The most recognized.
Yes.
In the Second Amendment. Yes, exactly.
This is true. It's hard to believe. It really should be one of the attractive women that has the most attractive backside.
I didn't say attractive. They didn't say attractive. It's recognized.
Recognized.
You're right. Sorry about that.
Most attractive.
Man,
most recognized.
As I always say, I know I have a nice butt because when I walk away, I always hear people say, "What an ass."
But when we opened the bullet, I'm not kidding you. It went from A to T, and it took 7 minutes. I could do it now, but we're already late on the segment. 7 minutes to read all the places in New York that concealed carry permit holders will not be allowed to carry. That is ridiculous in the extreme. And we also talked, and we had another story, and this is kind of where I was started going off for NICS checks. There was a story written by, I'm going to jump over to those show notes. There was a story written by Cam Edwards, and I actually I channeled my inner Rob Morse. There were some numbers in this story. I extrapolated numbers, and NICS misses. They have false negatives. Excuse me. A failure rate of 0.000484586% of false negatives of people who got a gun and they shouldn't have. That's less than 1/10,000th of a percent is when they got a gun and yet they shouldn't have. That means that they have a 98.5% failure rate or north of that in false positives. They get delayed and yet they shouldn't have.
Right.
I get delayed.
Yeah.
I've gotten delayed twice. That's why I got the enhanced permit, because now they can't delay me.
So,
my issue with the NICS failing, whether it's the situations that we just read about or the other ones that we talked about during the bullet, this is the same government that says we need more background checks. We need universal background checks. And the second thing is, this is the same government that says the background checks are going to protect you and we're going to protect you, but they let a number of these mass murderers slip through the cracks, whether they're known to police and whether they keep an eye on these people. They already have a file on these people. This is the same government that says, hey, we need to go through more background checks because we're going to be here to protect you, and then they fail their job. Right, they fail their job at doing the background checks properly.
Hey, you got another fan, Charlie. George says you would have read that list faster, and he's probably right.
I did think about hopping in and saying, all right, Paul, you get a drink, and I'm going to read some here.
Oh, that was a little brutal. All right, let's see here. Let me go back to show notes. I want to make sure that Susan, let's go ahead and do this New York story, and then just after New York, I think we're going to go ahead and call it, and we're going to jump to DGUs.
Yes, sir. New Yorkers may be in worse shape following the Bruin decision. The bill presented to overhaul the concealed carry law is far more cumbersome and overreaching than the May issue version. 1. A permit may be denied on moral character grounds. 2. A host of information will need to be provided, including social media accounts, and you must submit to an interview with the licensing office. 3. 16 hours of training plus live fire. 4. The state will audit every month to determine if there is a reason to revoke. Watch what you post to Facebook. 5. It will be a felony to possess a gun in a sensitive place. And the entire state of New York will be deemed a sensitive place, I'm sure. 6. It is up to the person to know what is a sensitive place. 7. Do not leave your gun in your car, not even accidentally. 8. Licenses are only good for 3 years. Then return to step 1 and start all over again. 9. There will be a database to record the sale of ammunition and a background check to purchase. And trips to the range? Yeah, those will require a background check as well.
I suppose I could go, because I've still got show notes open for what Charlie and I did. I suppose I could go grab A through T and we could spend another 7 minutes reading all of those places where you cannot carry in New York once this takes effect in September. But I'm not going to I'm not going to make Susan read that. And yeah.
And we don't have the time.
Well, and we don't want to have Charlie sitting up there for another 7.5 minutes on a solo screen. So
we could give Rob his turn.
Yes, we could.
Not today. We couldn't.
Knowing Rob, he'd just turn his camera off on us, so we'd have a blank screen. But anyway, no, it's New Year. I said this on the bullet. I'm going to say it again now. I'm fairly certain that I know there's already been lawsuits filed, and I know SAF is working on. There are going to be more lawsuits filed. This law, if it does go into effect, if it does not get an injunction, this law is short time for this world. It's going to get slapped down. It's going to get slapped down hard in the courts, even if it has to wait all the way till it gets to the Supreme Court. Justice Thomas just will not let this stand.
I donated some money to a number of Second Amendment organizations, because if you thought there was a time when money talks and, oh, I wish they were a perfect Second Amendment organization, can this one's to this and to that, get the cobwebs out of your wallet. This is the time when lawyers are going to win the day. You know how to do this, do it. And it was the best couple $1,000s I ever spent. Please do it now. A lot of people desperately need to be sued.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn that into a direct pitch for SAF, simply because they pay my paycheck, but I honestly believe SAF has done more to help gun rights than any other organization over the past 50 years. The main way SAF has gotten our gun rights back and are expanding them is through the courts. There are currently more than 30 active lawsuits in the court system in the United States the SAF is involved in. And there are more coming. It is only $150 for a lifetime membership in the SAF. If you're not a lifetime member, please go to saf.org/join. Believe me, these lawsuits are not free. They are incredibly expensive. Even if the lawyer himself goes pro bono and donates that lawyer's time, that's fantastic. However, he cannot donate his staff's time. He cannot donate the printing company's time, because all this stuff has to be printed up many, many different times, many different ways. He cannot donate a lot of other things that these lawsuits cost. The average is over $1 million to get a lawsuit through the federal system up to, not through, up to the Supreme Court. So your membership in SAF really does help.
Amen.
All right. And Charlie and Rob, I know you both have been members for a very long time. Let's do this. Let's take a break. We're going to go ahead and go to DGUs. I think this is going to be our last break. We're going to do what we've done a couple times because we're about. I want to keep these to 90 minutes, and we're getting close. We're going to combine DGUs and the close of the show. We're going to take one more break. We're going to hear from JPFO. We'll be right back to do DGUs and close the show up right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
And welcome back to the final segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Before we get to the DGUs, I need to read, as I always do, these discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The defensive gun use segment is intended as information, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Susan, in gun-free California, we've got a DGU.
Yeah, I love this guy. This is my kind of guy. Joe is 93 years old and a retired plumber. He did well for himself during his life. As a plumber, he accumulated a lot of tools. Joe's also a musician. He also has quite a few musical instruments. On Friday, they broke into his home during the bright daylight hours. On a Tuesday, they were back. Only this, it was 12 a.m. These weren't the first. And dying by some little cuts, as they say. Thieves were stealing a little at a time, a little here, a little there. He doesn't have, and he wasn't going to take any longer. It asked Joe the police, and eventually they came. And statement, we did a little.
Susan, your microphone is cutting in and out.
Oh.
Yeah. I'm gonna have you check the mute button on your cable. But yeah, you're cutting in and out. No, and now I lost you totally.
I hate.
Would you like me to read it?
Yeah, Rob, why don't you go ahead and take a crack at it? I'm sorry, Susan.
Joe is a 93-year-old and a retired plumber. He did well for himself during his life. As a plumber, he accumulated a lot of tools. He's also a musician. He also has quite a few musical instruments. On Friday, thieves broke into his home during daylight hours. On a Tuesday night, they were back, except this time it was 30 minutes after midnight. And these were not the first cases. Joe had been dying by 1,000 cuts, as they say, the thieves stealing a little at a time. He doesn't have much, and he was not going to let them take it any longer. In the past, Joe called the police, and eventually they came and they took a statement and maybe did a little investigating with no results. Remember, as we said, don't mess with the old guy. As Oscar Mama, a relative of Joe's wife, said, he took the law into his own hands. He's been working all his life, and whatever little things he has, he'll protect them. Joe opened fire, and the burglar ended his ill-conceived task with a gunshot wound. Investigators determined it was the old man who opened fire. Law enforcement was investigating a black Audi near the home, but didn't tell anyone in the press who it belonged to. Interesting when your robbers are driving an Audi around.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, off topic. As for Joe, he was taken into custody for questioning, but no word on any charges. And Mama didn't believe he would be arrested because it happened inside his home.
California does have interesting laws. When I say interesting, I don't mean in a good way. But
they do have a castle doctrine law.
Yeah, and so I'm really hoping for this guy, and I'm right there with you, Rob. If you're robbing a old guy, presumably of his musical instruments, and you're driving an Audi, there's Audis aren't exactly. He's not driving a Pinto. The Audis are not cheap.
Right. Let's face it, the Audi could have been stolen too.
Yeah, it could have. Absolutely could have. Not a lot. I mean, other than good on the old guy for defending himself, defending his home. Not a lot else to go on here, guys.
Yeah, no, this is a happy ending story in that the 93-year-old man used a gun to protect himself. He used an equalizer to get the bad guys out of his house before they stole more stuff.
Susan, you want to give this next one a try, or do we want to just hand this off to Charlie, or do you want me to read it? Okay. And I need to order her a new mic. I need to order her an ATR 2100 like I have, and we'll have that by next week. So, next one out of Tacoma, Washington. On May 30th, a Republican Pierce County Council candidate, Josh Harris, was in a wooded area near a homeless camp looking for stolen property and found 2 suspected stolen vehicles. Press was reported it was not clear why he was looking for stolen property or what he was looking for. A woman in one of the tents told Harris that a man knew of him and had threatened to kill him. After police arrived, they confirmed 1 vehicle was stolen and began walking in the area. Someone drove up a path past the officers and drove towards Harris. Harris fired several rounds at the windshield and hit the driver. Driver stopped, sped away from Harris in reverse. Harris said the driver had his left hand out the window and it appeared he was holding a gun. His account was corroborated by 5 people. This includes the 2 police officers who were wearing body cameras. The investigation determined the shooting justified. Harris or others would have been hit by the vehicle. The driver was later found in the encampment with gunshot wounds which were not life-threatening. I want to say I had training Friday on the Bullet last Friday when I talk every week with Tom, or that every other week with Tom Walls, and I mentioned then that one of the most difficult things I've ever done in training with a firearm was shooting a moving target while I myself was moving, something I got to practice at the Firearms Academy in Seattle. It is incredibly difficult, but it is doable. And you can still get 10 ring shots, just not as reliably as if both targets are standing still. Good on good on Mr. Harris for being able to. Obviously, I'm sure if the car's driving at me, I am going to be moving. If there's a firearm pointed at me, I'm also going to want to be shooting. So good on him for being able to make shots while he was moving and shooting at a moving target.
I am not going to comment on the character of the attacker, but you're living in a homeless encampment with a number of stolen vehicles, and you run over citizens and the police. I'm thinking this is not your first crime, and the crimes were probably more serious than jaywalking.
Probably. I'm also going to kind of have to wonder, to be able to be going after police officers with a car, I'm wondering if, I'm going to borrow a phrase from Rob Morris, although I don't think there's going to be a toxicology report because there's a living subject, but should he have perished, I would want to know what the toxicology report would have been. I'm thinking there was something on board that
Wow.
Yeah. Mind-altering substance, let's put it that way.
Probably safe to assume that, yeah.
Yeah.
Shall we go on to what we've been writing?
Yeah, Rob. Dude, 2 weeks since we've been on the air. I think you probably have put up, 14 days, you probably put up 30, 40 articles, right?
We're just going to cover one. Thank God that we have dedicated police officers on campus who are protecting our children every day. Almost all those officers do a phenomenal job, and they tell us that too many students will die if we wait for outside help to stop an attacker at schools. The recently passed Safer Communities Act ignores their advice. The act explicitly prohibits funding to arm or train school staff. Okay, if you wanted another SRO on campus, no, can't use the Safer Communities Act for that. If you said, hey, the guy who's driving the school bus, he's an hour from any help if something happens, you can neither arm him nor train him for armed defense. That tells us everything about the legislation and the politicians who proposed it. That article is called Funding Fantasy and Ignoring Evil as we protect our students. My articles are up at Clash Daily and Amoland and at my blog, slowfacts.wordpress.com. Charlie, talk to me.
All right. Well, I have a show coming out tomorrow, and tomorrow my show is with Santi from the Santi TV, and she's a gal from the Houston area that she puts out a lot of content, a lot of videos. It does a lot of interviews, and she was a lot of fun. This was kind of fun. She told me she started stalking me for a little bit, and then reached out to me and said, hey, listen, when you're in Texas, down in Houston area, I'd love to be on the show. So I interviewed her when we were at the NRA annual meetings. And so that's going to be coming out tomorrow. And today I was actually a guest on the Rogue Banshee podcast and the Rogue Banshee show. And that is out on all of his social media and YouTube and podcasts. So please check that out and subscribe to both of our YouTube channels if you are not. So that's what I've been up to. Paul, tell us about the Bullet. How often you've been cranking out material, and what's coming up with you?
Daily, I've been putting, well, except Sundays, daily I've been putting out something for the Bullet. I mentioned, and I'm very proud of this one, the Training Friday show that went out last Friday with Tom Walls. We talked about picking a trainer, what makes a good trainer, what makes a not so good trainer, and how you can tell, and how you get prepared for a class. I really liked that show. Saturday was a pretty good show as well. We did Alex Uli, Mike Piwowarski, and me. We covered an overview of the week, and I had a good time with that show as well. Coming up this week, we've got a full week of the Bullet coming up, 5 p.m. Central Time. Come join us right where you're watching this one. So I think that's going to do it for us. I want to get this one over here. George, talking about New York's safe place, sensitive places. George wants to know, is appendix carry a sensitive place? Depending on your holster, dude. If you've got a good holster, appendix carry's safe. But, yeah. So anyway, I think that's going to wrap it up. I want to get to my show notes here. So even though I've said it 500 or 626 times, that does wrap up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. I'd like to thank Rebecca Schmoe for joining us today. So for Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Charlie, and Rob.
Until next time,
stay safe,
be aware,
and we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
All right, that's it for the recording, folks. I'm not going to be doing a post show today because, quite frankly, I got to head the other way for the restroom. I've been on the air cumulatively for almost 2.5 hours, and it's time to go. But thank you, everybody who has been watching and has been commenting, and come join us next week, same bat time, same bat channel. We'll see you then, folks.